Welcome to the Interfaith Imperative, engaging religious diversity in higher education. I am thrilled that you're here for what is sure to be an invigorating and engaging learning experience. My name is Janett Cordovés, and I serve as IFYC's Director of Higher Education Partnerships. And as we get settled into our digital living room, I'd like to tell you about a few of the technological features we're going to be using today to enhance our learning. So throughout the conversation, the speakers will be using live video and audio, and you can view closed captioning by selecting CC button at the bottom of your screen. So I'll just give you a second to look for that. You'll also receive messages from IFYC, including the bios of our speakers and any resources that we mentioned in the chat box feature. Today, to submit questions for today's panelists, please use the chat box feature or the raise your hand feature. The raise hand feature is located in the reactions tab at the bottom right of your toolbar. I know by now we are all Zoom experts, but in case you took a digital cleanse, just want to give you a few minutes to reorient yourself to the Zoom platform. If you're engaged on Twitter, please use tags at IFYC and AAC&U and pose your questions and reflections in the larger digital space. Bring others that weren't able to attend today's conversation into the conversation and just gather other thoughts. Lastly, all registered participants will receive a follow-up email and recording of today's conversation by the end of the week. So let me close some items out and we will get started. All right. Well, our conversation today has been intentionally curated to be in a meeting format. If you haven't done so already, please click on Gallery View, as we wish to foster interaction and engagement. For this reason, we encourage you to keep your cameras on and share comments, reflections, and questions throughout our time using the chat box feature. This virtual platform allows us to connect with individuals from all over the world. This is quite exciting, and there are over 400 people participating in today's conversation. During our time together, we will use a digital tool called Mentimeter. Mentimeter is a wonderful tool that I like to use to engage with one another in the digital space. So to go to Mentimeter, please go to the website, and this will come up in the chat box. It's www.menti.com. And when you get there, you can leave the window open, as we will be using it throughout our time together. My teammate Noah Nakau is adding this information to the chat box, and I'd like to request that you click on the Menti link and open it. Once you open the Mentimeter, keep the window open, as you will use this tool a few times throughout the conversation. Again, I'll just give you a minute to get situated. And if you're just joining us now, welcome. To get us warmed up, I'm going to ask you to answer a question using the Mentimeter. So now that you're on the website, to access the question and respond, you'll need to insert a code. That code is 74838285. If I can just get a thumbs up or we're good, we're in the right place, I would appreciate it. Oh, I see lots of responses coming in, so we're in a good place. I'd love to know, what is your discipline and area of expertise? There's so many ways to come and work and engage across religious difference and engage interfaith cooperation that we thought this be a really great way to see who was able to be with us today and to see maybe some common grounds or some interesting intersections that we haven't thought from below. Noah, I'm seeing that some of our participants aren't seeing the link. So if we can add that again, just in case it had to do by the time that you entered the room. All right, and again, if Mentimeter isn't working for you, please use the chat box feature. What is your discipline and area of expertise? Welcome to the Interfaith Imperative, Engaging Religious Diversity in Higher Education. I am grateful that you are here for this important conversation. Please note that today's time is formatted to be a conversation, which is different from a webinar format. For our meeting today, our panelists will introduce themselves, share an area of their work, and then pose a question to you via Mentimeter. Each panelist will do this, so please keep that Mentimeter tab open. Afterward, the floor will be yours. We'll do our best to facilitate this process. As I said, there's more than 400 of us in this space, but we ask you to use the raise hand feature and the chat box feature to assist us. We are seconds away from beginning, so please hit gallery view, turn on your cameras, and make sure your microphone is currently muted. I'm a strong believer that technology is meant to enhance our experience, not deter it. To assist us with our technological needs today, my teammate Noah Nakau is available. Please directly IM Noah if you need assistance with Zoom, Mentimeter, sound, or technology in general. Noah, please say hello in the chat box. Because we know that one of the best ways to deepen our learning is to reflect and engage material and then move to application, considering our own unique context, we will be utilizing the Mentimeter to enhance our online learning today. So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we will be posing questions for you to respond via Mentimeter. So if you haven't done so already, please click on the Mentimeter link in the chat box, insert the code, and join us in that conversation. This is our collective space, and we want to learn more about you, your work, and institutions, regardless of the sector or discipline you are in. We are excited to discuss and highlight models and initiatives that are engaging religious diversity and progressing towards a world where interfaith cooperation is a social norm. You're in for a treat. As we jump into our time, I would like to hold a moment, a space, to intentionally slow down and give gratitude for our lives, our status, this technology, one another, the conversation we are about to participate in. We could be anywhere, but we are here. So let's take that in. It's also a pause to call upon our ancestors and those who came before us, recognizing, as I'm calling in from Miami, Florida, that I'm located on the stolen lands of the Ais, Apalachee, Calusa, Yegai, Miami, Potano, Seminoles, Tequesta, Timcuca, and Tocobaga. Let's take a collective breath to arrive, remember, and be present. So welcome. My name is Janett Cordovés, and I serve as the Director of Higher Ed Partnerships at Interfaith Youth Corps, and as the co-director of the Institute on Interfaith Excellence. I have the pleasure, alongside my colleague, Dr. Dawn Michelle Whitehead, Vice President of the Office of Global Citizenship for Campus, Community, and Careers at the American Association of Colleges and Universities, to welcome you to the Interfaith Imperative, Engaging Religious Diversity in Higher Education. A growing number of institutions are recognizing the need to engage religious pluralism, foster interfaith cooperation, and embed interfaith literacy into curricular and co-curricular initiatives in light of the ever-increasing global, national, and local religious diversity. The most pressing issues of our day cannot be adequately approached solely with focused disciplinary techniques. Rather, we need to be equipped to understand the breadth of contributing factors such as social, scientific, economic, technological, cultural, and religious, and be prepared to integrate, wrestle with, and understand the various perspectives, religious or not, to arrive at creative solutions to significant problems. While AAC&U and IFYC have collaborated over the years, a partnership was formed in 2018 to advance interfaith cooperation in the broader context of quality liberal education and equity in higher ed. This partnership, entitled the Interfaith Leadership in Higher Education Initiative, prioritizes the importance of religious identity, worldview diversity, interfaith cooperation, and interfaith leadership in equipping the next generation of leaders, improving campus climate, and creating a culture that is more inclusive of religious diversity. This initiative also builds faculty and staff capacity to transform experiences with diversity into engaged and productive pluralism that minimize pluralization and increase engagement across lines of religious, spiritual, and secular differences. It is critically important for educators and leaders, corporations, politicians, religious leaders, nonprofit leaders, government workers, doctors, and pilots, as you'll hear about in just a moment, all citizens to understand the nuances and complexities of the individuals and groups we serve, teach, work, and live with. To do this well, we need to understand how individuals, groups, and communities make meaning of the world around them and what the connections are between language and faith, culture and rituals, and values and decisions. In AAC&U's and IFYC's 2022 joint publication, Interfaith Cooperation for Our Times, Educating Citizens for a Diverse Democracy, which the link will be in the chat box, founder and president Eboo Patel writes, "We have found an avenue for the expression of religious identity in the way that doesn't create balkanization, but instead facilitates bridging social capital." Today, we will hear from experts in the field doing the difficult and necessary work of building bridges across lines of religious difference. We will hear about initiatives that engage religious diversity in and outside the classroom, how these developments have impacted their campus climate and made departmental, divisional, and institutional change. I'm so excited for what is about to unfold. For these reasons and many others, I'm thrilled that you're here. So please pull up a chair if you're not comfortable already, get close, and let's discuss the Interfaith Imperative, engaging religious diversity in higher education. To anchor us in today's conversation, I'd like to invite my colleague and co-director, Dr. Michelle Whitehead, to share a few words, provide a closer look into our partnership and publication, and welcome our panelists. Dawn?
Thank you so much, Janet, and good day, everyone. We are so pleased that you've joined us. We are beyond thrilled that so many of you are with us today to discuss engaging religious diversity in higher education. And again, I must echo Janett's enthusiasm that we are so pleased to share our publication, Interfaith Cooperation for Our Times, Educating Citizens for a Diverse Democracy. As Janett said, it is the result of a partnership between AAC&U and Interfaith Youth Corps. And the value of this work in service to democracy is as part of our mission could not be more timely. But this work doesn't belong to AAC&U. This work doesn't belong to IFYC. It belongs to the institutions who have participated in this project over the years. And their hard work of examining religious diversity, interfaith studies in the curriculum, outside the curriculum and co-curricular initiatives, looking at religious identity on campus, how to embed this work in campus diversity priorities, interfaith competence and literacy among faculty, staff, and students. This work in looking at cross-curricular and cross-communication skills, their work is what we are here to highlight today. And we do know how critical this is to prepare students for work, life, and citizenship. And again, we encourage you to download our publication, which is a free PDF, and we encourage you to use it with your colleagues. Now, while the publication highlights the work of about 14 institutions, 41 institutions have been a part of this project since its inception. And this project does include public and private institutions and will include both going forward. And today we have the pleasure to hear from 3 individuals from 3 diverse institutions to talk about their work at their institutions in this space. Now, each panelist will provide a short overview of their institution's interfaith work from different perspectives. I'll pose a question that's based on some of the questions you submitted when you registered for this event. And then we will have an opportunity to respond to the mentee with questions that they have for us as participants in this this webinar. And then finally, we will open it up for Q&A, where you will be welcome to raise your hand, come off mute and ask your question, or use the chat. So again, thank you for submitting those questions on Zoom ahead of time so we could make sure that we were going to meet your needs. Now, I'm going to very briefly introduce the panelists because we want to have the bulk of the time spent talking about the project, programs, content, that kind of thing, so that you're getting what you need. So we'll put a fuller bio in the chat. So our panelists today, first we have Frances Sweeney, who is a professor of Spanish and the vice president for mission at St. Mary's College of California. She will be followed by David Keck, who serves as chaplain at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida. And then finally, we will have Kelly Dunlop, who serves as the Associate Director for the Center for Campus Involvement and Interfaith Lead for Student Life at the University of Michigan. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Frances. Frances, could you start by telling us a bit about the work that you're doing?
Thank you so much. And hello, everyone from sunny Northern California. I am here at St. Mary's College of California. We are a Lasallian Catholic liberal arts institution of approximately 3,000 students. I want to do three things. I want to introduce myself, my journey, talk a little bit about interfaith progress, and especially the alliance with other DEI initiatives. So quickly, as Dawn introduced, and I want to thank Janett and Dawn for inviting me here today. I am an AAC&U IFYC groupie. Happy to say that. Most of my time here at St. Mary's, I've been in academic administration as a dean and then an academic vice president. And now for 3 years, a vice president for mission. And I say that to invite each of you to think about where you are in your institution. And I've been engaged with AAC&U institutes around service learning and community engagement, and now the Interfaith Initiative. Because I think that when we talk about, my perspective is institutional change, and my position as mission as a Lasallian Catholic institution, I ask myself, what does it mean to be a Lasallian Catholic institution for the 21st century? How do we live that today? And I invite all of you to think about this question from your own positions at your own institutions. And for me, the answer has to be about equity agents. It has to be about this commitment to the good as we consider our students. So that's my introduction. My interfaith, to talk a little bit about St. Mary's, it was the Institute. We've had DEI initiatives for about 20 years here. We've had a Center for Engaged Religious Pluralism and Interfaith Minor, but it hadn't kind of risen to the cultural level. And it was the Institute we attended in 2019. And I think this is why I'm on AAC&U and IFYC groupie, because they exhort us to have that bottom-up interest that comes from students and faculty and staff, and they invite teams to also have some senior level person. So you're putting the bottom-up organic interest and passion, and you're matching it with institutional vision and leadership and real critical support. So with that, we left the 2019 Institute with a full action plan for institutional level curricular and co-curricular initiatives. When I took this to the CCIE, which is our institutional diversity committee, it was striking to those around the table, 18 people, we didn't have anything that was explicitly addressed religious diversity or interfaith cooperation. And so when we think about this, it's been so powerful at the institutional level now to have a committee of that larger group that has our own, we're called CIRCLE, the Committee for Interfaith and Religious Learning, Cooperation, and Engagement, CIRCLE. And we've worked on institutional change, like a calendar, like syllabus language for faculty to honor students from different faith traditions who have to miss class, right? Absentee and vacation policies for faculty and staff coming from different faith traditions. At the curricular level, doing and we got a supplemental grant. Thank you again, IFYC, AAC&U. We're working right now to invite faculty to audit across the curriculum. Where do we have interfaith? Not just in our religious studies requirement, but across the institution. And then we're going to have a 2-day institute ourselves on campus, again, following the model, to help faculty think about revising their courses for our core curriculum, for their disciplines, And how do we ground it? How do we give them language around religious cooperation and interfaith? At the co-curricular level, I really want to shout out our Mission and Ministry Center. They have embraced interfaith cooperation as a key emphasis of our Mission and Ministry Center with an interfaith sacred space, student leaders who have attended the IFYC student leaders. Literally last weekend, we had an engagement with St. Mary's and the University of San Francisco, an interfaith student retreat, attending various places in the Bay Area. So examples at the institutional, curricular, and co-curricular level. And third, I do want to talk about this DEI Alliance. And why is it? Because many of you asked about DEI, also about just being a religious institution. What does it mean to have interfaith? And I would encourage you to read the last chapter in the publication they just mentioned, where about 5 of us at different religious institutions talked about our interfaith. Because I really want to say that in our equity initiatives, I think many of us have moved from access for underrepresented students to achievement. Following the global pandemic, as well as the pandemic about racism in the United States, I think there's more of an emphasis on community, not just on student development, but on our holistic development. And as faith-based institutions, we have a commitment to helping our students develop, but also supporting each other. So my last comment is we've had wonderful alliances with our Black Lives Matter committee, with our Muslim Student Association committee, with our LGBTQIA committee, with our Asian Pacific Islanders committee bringing Valerie Carr to campus last spring virtually. So I really want to encourage you from your own positions. Well, I want to have the questions from the Mentimeter, but we say, when we think about our students' development, where are those places on campus and how do we model this humanistic sense of self? So for us at St. Mary's, our interfaith cooperation is not another diversity initiative. I use the image of the quilt. I encourage you all to think about a quilt. Imagine the quilt from your grandparents, or maybe you're a quilter yourself. And this is, for us, I think interfaith cooperation is a sine qua non, is a without which nothing. It is an essential thread to building the other diverse pieces we have on our campus when we talk about the fullness of student identity and student development. It's the sense of wonder, it's the sense of wholeness as we teach students to be models for empathy and respect. So maybe, Dawn, we could put the questions in the Mentimeter now, so we encourage people to think about their own campuses and where these alliances are occurring.
Okay, I think that sounds great. That's a great transition. So for those of you that are joining us now, we're using the Mentimeter and the information will be in the chat, www.mentimeter.com. And then the access code that you will enter is 7483-8285. And that will be in the chat in 1 minute. And before we get to that, I just wanted to, you just reminded me of something when you talked about the quilt. I think that's the other piece that we need to acknowledge and recognize, is that our work is somewhat like that as well. So we've got all of the institutions who are coming together as different colors of thread. We've got AAC&U and IFYC, and then we also have the funders of this project, the Lilly Endowment and AVDF, the Arthur Vining Davis Educational Foundations. And we all came together and said, if we truly want society to advance and we want students to be ready for this, we have to come together and find a way to have solutions for students and to make sure they're getting this preparation. So thank you so much for bringing us back to that beautiful illustration. And so it looks like we're ready for the Mentimeter. I don't know, Francis, if you have any.
This is exactly what I would say has been on our campus. And if you look at the place that religion plays, or we could say interfaith cooperation, religious diversity, it is often the kind of like, oh, it's like what is that? The V8, I should have had a V8. Where is religion when we're talking about our DEI equity initiatives on our campus? And so often it's much focus on, and appropriately so, this isn't to be critical of any of the other DEI initiatives, but it's that fullness of the human body, as I say, as we grow from this pandemic, as we're approaching a humanistic sense of ourselves as institutions. And I encourage us, look at that. it's pretty striking that how can we really focus on this, the sense of interfaith and wonder that we all have because we are in each other's presence. The divinity, as Lasallians, we say, let us remember that we're in the holy presence of God. Because we're in each other's presence, regardless of our backgrounds and our faith experiences, the divinity we all have. And so I thank you for those who have shared this. I think there's another question as well. And you might think about for your own institution, how might you start to think about, let's see, how much have religious difference and interfaith been addressed or engaged? And the choices were not at all, some, and very much. Wow, this is powerful. Thank you, everyone. And perhaps why you've joined the webinar today, this conversation, is to say, how do we move this? How do we move this particular question on the continuum? And this is where I come back to using the Institute, using support, reading the documents to say, where are the places? I'm thinking of Mr. Rogers. Look for the helpers. Where are the places on campus where, I mean, for us, it was overwhelmingly positive when we announced that we were having an interfaith religious diversity committee. Like, thank you for doing this. So where are those places where you might get that both bottom-up organic interest and commitment and passion coupled with the top-down institutional leadership and support? Thank you. And this is a key. This is key, and I think we'll come back to this throughout our conversation this morning or this afternoon. How much collaboration can we have across our DEI? And often the other collaborators appreciate it because it means more participants at their events. It means financial support. It means partners for the work. So this is good. It looks like there's some collaboration across categories and support. So I'm gonna pass the baton back to Dawn. And I think for me, this is the most important question, that intersectionality of identity, and how do we really hold ourselves, not in our particular markers, but understanding the fullness of who we are as human beings.
Thank you so much, Frances. And if you have other questions to follow up, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll raise them as we go on. And as Frances said, now we'll turn it over to David, who's going to tell us a little bit about the work that he's doing at Embry-Riddle and he and his colleagues are doing there. So David, we'll turn it over to you.
Hello, and thank you all very much. And I guess where I want to start is I want to take an international flight. And I want to take you through a couple parts in that process to help you understand why at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University we've become interested in interfaith work. So let's say if you're going to, we'll just say choose Delta. I'm not getting paid by Delta, but might as well be specific. So I'm going to take a Delta flight, an international flight. I'm going to order a meal, and under my meal selections, I can find any number of different options, including vegetarian, but also religiously specific ones, such as kosher or halal. And what does that tell us? It tells us right away that the aviation industry recognizes that they are transporting people of all kinds and backgrounds and traditions. And if they want to maintain a broad customer base, they're going to take interfaith knowledge seriously. Then let's say I arrive at the airport and I realize it's a crazy idea to get on an airplane. And so I need to go into one of the prayer rooms at many airports because I'm not sure what's going to happen. These things don't really work. After all, we know that they're just crazy. So I go into an interfaith chapel and I find that there are things respectful of my tradition, whether it's a prayer rug or an arrow on the ceiling indicating the direction of Mecca, so I can be properly directed in my prayers. And this tells us the aviation physical space of aviation and aerospace has a place for religion and religious diversity. So why do I say that? As our name suggests, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, we are an aviation and aerospace university, and we focus on preparing our students for those sectors. And so we have some of our students interested in working for NASA or SpaceX. Our students are excited about maybe being a pilot for Delta or United or some other business venture. We do meteorology and some other things. About 7,000 students. We are a focused institution and on these sectors, and everything we do tends to go through them. So how on earth does that relate to religion? We are not a school founded by religious tradition, and I appreciate Francis's discussion there and the importance of that particular tradition. We are a school founded by, if it's in any religion, it's religion of aviation, but it is a secular, private, nonprofit institution. About 7,000 students. And so on one level, we have no formal need to be involved in religion. We're in some sense a technical school. We're a STEM university. We do not grant BAs, only BS degrees. And I think so part of our challenge is how do we then sort of make the connection with religion? So I go to the story about getting a flight on Delta and going to the prayer chapel in an airport as a way of saying that for us to do interfaith work, we have to figure out what our identity already is. And that is by understanding our story, understanding who our people are, understanding what the nature of the sectors we prepare our students for includes, then we can start doing interfaith work. So again, we have about 7,000 students, about 6,000 or so undergrad, and the rest are master students, a few PhDs. So our goal is we're preparing students for very specific sectors, and as we can demonstrate, I say we meaning the people involved in interfaith work, as we can demonstrate the value of interfaith education and cooperation and formation, then we can work with the faculty and staff to make the case for including interfaith education and formation in the curriculum or in co-curricular programming. So I guess one of the messages I would have for schools here and represented is to think, again, like Francis, what is it about your institution where you already have these things in place? What is it where are places you can tap into an existing sense of identity or mission? What does it mean, for example, to be at a state school? A state school has a broad set of concerns, and while that is a different kind of intellectual, philosophical, pedagogical commitment, one that is very much open to interfaith work. It may not be explicitly religious in the way that a religious tradition is, or a non-sectarian institution is, but nevertheless, it is one which makes things a commitment to its student body. And so taking that seriously means you have to take seriously the students that come there and the range of beliefs that they bring. So as I think about what we do, our focus really has been on trying to tap into the existing ideas, ideology. We are doing research with our career services department. I saw someone in the chat identified being a career service person, and welcome. I think that's great. We work with them to identify who is sort of our corporate leaders that we can talk to and ask them, how do you value the understanding interfaith formation? And does that make a difference if you're trying to hire someone? And I remember one of the conversations we had with an executive from Boeing, and I asked him, well, does Boeing care about these kinds of things? And he said, well, Boeing wants to be the best aviation company in the world, which means we have to have the best employees in the world, which means we have to have people who are capable of working with people from all over the world. End of discussion. And so it was a simple value of we want to have the best people. And if we start cutting ourselves off by only looking for one group of people who match one profile, or find only one group of people who can work with a very narrow and limited set of folks, we're failing as a business. So we've tried to work with corporate partners to try to understand what their needs are and work backwards from that, so that they can then, so we can help tell our students, look, if you want to get a job at Boeing, you want to fly for an airline, you want to understand the nature of the business you're going into, you need to do this work. And instead of saying it's something we need to do because we've never thought about it, I try to make the case of we need to do it because that's who we've always been. And the aviation sector has not always been a welcoming sector. But I think if we think of ourselves, at least in the idealistic sense of what does it mean to bring people together, and then I think we kind of frame it as something who we've always been and how do we live into that promise. So that's been the focus of our work.
Okay. Thank you so much, David. And I think one of the questions that was posed, we were going to ask you about, was talking a bit more about how you've addressed religiously diverse content in courses that weren't devoted to the study of religion. And you've done that. So I think we'll move on to your mentee questions. So I don't know if you'd like to pose that and know if we can have that displayed. And again, for those that have joined a little bit later, the mentee link will be in the chat, as well as the code to enter 7483-8285 is on the screen as well. So David, tell us your mentee questions.
Yeah, so this is the kind of coming off of the discussion, the question of how your school understands itself. And again, I think you've heard Francis talk about that as well. And I think my impression is that many institutions, obviously not all, thank you for filling the poll, have some sense of preparing students for the global or international careers. And once you've taken that step, you've already taken a huge step toward the title of our gathering, so the Interfaith Imperative. How on earth can we possibly prepare students for working in any kind of global or international career, aviation or otherwise, if we don't take religious literacy seriously? And so to me, again, that starting point, do you have that starting point? And if you already have, that's one I think, at least for us, has been very valuable and very important. That's why I wanted to put that out there as a question. So the next one, and when I mean diverse in a broad sense, I think it's going to be where your starting point is. And to me, again, thinking about what our experience is and why we're grateful, because we are a very specialized institution, we get students from all over the world. Many countries will send their people here to get technical training, and whether it's in air traffic management, meteorology, or pilots. So we get students from all over the world quite easily. So we can already talk about who we already are as a student body and as a community of people who practicing different traditions. So again, that starting point question: who are we? Who are we already? And how do we talk about that? And it looks like many of you already have that basis for recognizing, again, who we are, so that the interfaith work is less a matter of, well, who do we think we ought to be because we need to do something different, and much more a matter of, well, this is who we already are. These are the people we serve. And as per the prior question, this is the world we're preparing them for.
Thank you so much, David. That was very helpful. And we'll look forward to additional questions and comments after we hear from Kelly. So I'm going to turn it up to Kelly, but I want to make sure you don't miss anything in the chat. We would not have gotten this work off the ground if it weren't for the generous funding of the Arthur Vining Davis Foundations. And so thank you so much, Michael, for putting in the chat the work that you all are doing and the funding that's also offered for institutions. So thank you for putting that in the chat. Make sure you catch that. And David, there was a question for you about international students at Embry-Riddle. And now we'll turn it over to our final presenter for the formal presentations before we get into the broader Q&A. And I'd love to turn it over to Kelly. So Kelly, tell us a little bit about University of Michigan.
Thanks so much, Dawn. Unlike my fellow panelists who are calling in from these beautiful sunny locations, I am in chilly and cloudy Ann Arbor, Michigan, so represent the Midwest. But no, very proud to be at the University of Michigan, where a little bit about us, we're a highly selective, large public university with nearly 45,000 students, 19 schools and colleges, a large medical center, nearly 1,500 student organizations and clubs, and also incredibly decentralized in the ways that we function as a university. And what I really want to kind of ground my comments in today is around strategic initiatives and the importance of listening. I think that's just been essential to the ways that we're navigating our work here at Michigan. So I joined student life and student affairs at U of M after over a decade of working in campus ministry at two large public universities. And within my first year here at U of M, we had launched a 5-year comprehensive DEI strategic plan. So we're hearing the intersections here across our comments about DEI initiatives. And really the strategic plan was institutionalizing the importance of these efforts, funding new positions across campus and priorities to really enhance DEI in our work. But what I quickly realized, as maybe some of you have as well, is that religious and spiritual diversity was near absent from this strategic plan. And so it almost became my personal research question, knowing from my previous work how essential this was to so many of our students. And so I really drew back to my community organizing and social work roots that I come from, and began to meet with folks across student life in particular. So the Wellness Center, our intergroup relations group, housing, and our RAs, and just sharing my observation and opening up a conversation with folks. So I began to hear that many knew it was an area of growth for the university, but they would feel ill-equipped about how to approach it, or felt as though their own training or education, it wasn't something that they ever addressed. Some shared experiences where engagement around this topic didn't go well, or they were afraid to say the wrong thing or had said the wrong thing prior. So it began to help me just to begin to see the historic and current landscape of our campus community and staff, and what the needs were. So we use this knowledge with a lot of support from IFYC and AAC&U most recently, to look for organic and mutually beneficial partnerships, and very slowly, organically began to build up campus capacity. So for some just quick examples, both our Student Union and Multicultural Center had been undergoing renovations, and each were going to include reflection rooms and foot washing stations in these new facilities. So this began an in for our team to work alongside facility staff and designers and student life folks and student organizations to further inform the decisions related to the space use and policies and the signage and what would be in the space, decor, all of these elements that we could become kind of the collaborating energy and approach it synergistically. We began to look for ways to partner with DEI leads. So with the strategic plan came all of these new positions where folks were embedded in different areas in schools and colleges. And part of their responsibilities were to regularly put on opportunities for staff and students and employees to learn or be trained about diverse topics. And so we were able to create a 1-hour training about our campus community that was really rooted in our data and our student population and our staff and faculty religious needs, and just essentially hoped that we were making their job easier, that we could open the door to raise awareness, that we could come in and provide that 1-hour training and begin to open the conversation. And so over time, these conversations led me to a cadre of stakeholders. Many of you have probably found when you're in these workshops or even on this call today, you start to see who your people are and who the folks were and are that are invested and passionate about this work as we are across campus. And so there was 5 of us who were able to attend the Institute for Interfaith Excellence this last summer across campus. So we had Multicultural Center represented, myself in student life and activities, our Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, someone who is on the academic side, and then a rabbi from Hillel who represents our Religious Workers Council. And together, we were able to kind of inform a practice that we wanted to bring back to campus. And so as we came together, what we really wanted to do was communicate and amplify the student voices at Michigan, to showcase the diverse experiences related to religious, spiritual, and secular identity here. We created some video modules that we'd be happy to share out with kind of a curriculum that could go alongside of it, so people could just embed it easily into training opportunities. And then we began to hold listening sessions. So we recognized that we hadn't heard as much from faculty and staff about what their experiences in the classrooms have been like, what it's like for them to navigate their own religious, spiritual, or secular identity and the role that they hold on campus. And so we're really leaning into these listening sessions and their experiences, as well as those of our students, to inform our next steps. So this work at a place like Michigan can certainly feel slow at times. The strategy and engagement work at a place this large takes a lot of time and relationship building. And at times I've certainly felt like I was taking 2 steps forward and then 1 step back again. Not as flashy perhaps as a one-off student program that could gather hundreds of students at once. However, I really believe that we're really challenging and changing a culture. And if we can continue the momentum and the partnership building and the advocacy, then we're slowly but surely turning the ship and creating a more inclusive culture for our students, faculty, and staff across religious and non-religious identities.
Thank you so much, Kelly. So one quick question before we go to the mentee. Again, this came from participants. Is can you talk? Sometimes it's hard to fully understand and apply. But could you tell us how you've navigated the separation of church and state when growing interfaith initiatives at public institutions? Could you just share a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was certainly something I heard right from the very beginning of folks feeling as though that separation needed to remain strong. And what I quickly learned is I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what separation of church and state actually means. And I had to do my own learning about that as well. But where we lean into, we can't do anything because we're a public institution. But frankly, I was feeling that we are really using that as an excuse. And so what we have embedded in these 1-hour trainings that we're doing is a couple slides that are focused just on that to kind of dispel the misunderstanding. We've leaned in on some Pew data to show actually how many Americans are misinformed about what we're allowed to do in the classroom or not. And that we can't certainly fund worship and we can't allow one religion over another to be prioritized, but there's so much that we can do. And then try to provide examples of ways that this work could be embedded into the portfolios that they're already doing. So thinking about the speakers that they're inviting, thinking about how they're onboarding new staff members and whether they've pointed out reflection rooms or where there's diverse meal options on campus. Little things that I think ultimately really do make a difference and begin to change a culture and showing them ways that they can embed the work that doesn't have to be this brand new thing, that it can just be with some small changes and helping to inform what the separation of church and state actually means one can and can't do.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kelly. We've got some follow-up questions in the chat that we'll share with you. But
Great.
Now you had some questions for participants in your mentee slides. So again, mentee.com, the code and information is on the screen as well.
Perfect. Yeah, so you heard me talk about a few partnerships and ways that we have begun to explore and collaborate across campus, but I would love for each of you to think about where is there one unit or maybe there's a specific program that has a large tradition on your campus or a class where you can envision a new interfaith partnership. Who's that person that you want to reach out to and have a one-on-one meeting or begin to think about how together collectively you can bring interfaith initiatives into your campus approach. Great, love seeing all, but there's so many options. And think really specifically too, I see DEI, student life, certainly at a place like Michigan, certainly, but I bet on your campuses too, that's really large. And so where specifically within student life, for example, or who would you think about talking to? Mission, rec and wellness, yeah, that's a great one. I'd love to hear from others too, if there's any rec programs in particular where you've found a great partnership. So many rich resources here. So encourage you all too. I hope this also spurs some new ideas for you as you look at the wisdom in the room.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Kelly. And now we'll bring our other panelists back. We have received a few questions, quite a few questions in the beginning. And I think I will pull up a question from the chat. So if there are questions from the chat, or again, if you want to come off mute, just raise your hand and we'll call on you. So I think we'll pull this question from the chat first and then go into some of the other prepared questions. This says, if you work at a faith-based institution, how do you promote interfaith inclusive dialogue and practices when there are religious members on campus who want to focus on the faith of the founders, their traditions and practices, specifically because we're this type of institution? Would anyone like to tackle that question before we pull through some others? It looks like Francis came off mute, so I'll turn it over to Francis.
Sure. And again, I thank you for the question. I think I'll speak from our own tradition as being Catholic. And again, I encourage you to look at that chapter 13 in the recent publication, because it has members from 5 different faith-affiliated institutions and how we're all discussing it. For us, the conversation is, because we're committed to conversations on faith, seeking understanding, because we're committed to student development that is holistic, that we don't ignore the spiritual element. We educate in the head, the heart, and the hands. Commitment to common good. If we are called to touch the hearts of our students, as we are here at a LaSallian school, in order to do that, we must understand who they are and affirm them. So one of some of the best support we've had has come, I saw others in the chat commenting, we don't take the data, we don't collect the data on our students' religious affiliation. But when you expose, and I loved Kelly's language about communicating and amplifying the voice, the space for interfaith, then the students, and also I would say staff and faculty, will express their appreciation. So I think that I don't know of any tradition that's a religious tradition that doesn't care about the fullness of development and care about the community members. So that positionality about identity and affirming identity and its fullness, open a conversation to religious diversity, even at any particular faith-affiliated institution. I welcome comments from anyone else, but as I said, for us, it's not in spite of our Catholic identity. It is because of our Catholic identity that we have to be welcome. We not have to be, we want to be. We expand our very definition of who we are as a faith-based institution by welcoming and affirming all faith traditions.
Frances, as you were sharing, it reminded me of when I worked at a faith-based institution and the importance of developing our student leaders and our chaplains and residential life staff to be able to triage or engage with the students that are on their floors and in their rooms, and have this lens for religious diversity when students propose that they have a roommate conflict, or when there's polarization in a particular student building, and understanding that perhaps there might be a religious lens to that. And so to be excellent in your profession, which can be educator or data analyst or chaplains here, or whichever role or sphere of influence you have, it's so important to have a radar screen for the religious diversity that's in the room, that's spoken or that's not, that's invisible. Because it is present. So as you were sharing, Frances, it reminded me of that work too.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of questions that seem to be, and forgive me for the thread might not be the right kind of thread, and then we'll go to Roxanne. But talking about building community, creating an environment where you can have conversations and discussions. If anyone could speak about how you're able to navigate hierarchy, power, privilege among faith traditions, also among folks that may be outspoken, when they're representing and addressing their faith communities, and how do you help navigate these types of difficult comments on campuses? So I don't know if anybody, that was a rough way of bringing together 6 questions I see, but I don't know if anybody could speak to that, and then we'll go to Roxanne, whose hand is up.
I'll take a stab if I might on that. I think it's so much depends on I think there are a couple different layers to that. One is the institutional layer, there's the faculty staff layer, and then the student layer. And I think one strategy is to try to cultivate sort of a mutual humility and ignorance. And by that I mean, and I think I think if you can create a space where we're all sharing some degree of I'm trying the right way to phrase this. I think there's something important about well, let me speak, I guess, specifically as someone from a Christian tradition. If I try to explain my tradition to anybody outside my tradition, I realize just how silly it sounds. Now, I take it very seriously, but I realize that my truth claims are pretty ridiculous at one level. And so I try to approach the interfaith work, and I try to encourage people to say, look, we have different beliefs, practices, traditions. If we all stop and listen to ourselves as part of the process, I think we can develop a sense of humility and a sense of an ability to put aside the privilege. Again, I'm just speaking from my own tradition, my own setting, but I think if we can cultivate that in the students, they're able to at least meet each other and within that common ground. I think the greater challenge is when we are focused, we reify the exclusivity of our traditions and don't develop the both and thinking, both absolutely faithful to my own tradition and able to receive as fully as I can whatever you're expressing about your own tradition. So if there's a larger sort of epistemological, I get points for a big word, right? Do you still get points for a big word with this group, or do I lose points? Larger, I think a larger sense of the sense of humility that we bring into it, I think that creates a space for addressing some of those questions.
Thank you so much, David. And we'll turn it to Roxanne and then Janett. And there's another question in the chat that if anyone has time to respond to as well, that'd be great. But I know our time is running short. So Roxanne.
I'll be quick. It kind of goes along with the question that you just asked. I'm in East Tennessee. You know, I just saw some stuff this weekend, guns, God, and country, you know, kind of thing. And so even kind of go along with what David said, I know Hans had put something in. I was wondering if anybody had any type of curriculum or any resources to help students to see past their own experience and to value, you know, other people's experience that may not be, you know, their own.
This is quite specific, Roxanne, but I did reference the project we did with IFYC and the video modules. And I think what was powerful about that is it's the voices of their peers, like right here on campus. And so we basically interviewed students and helped them to kind of share a bit of their story in just like short modules. And so to hear from others on campus in ways that there weren't always conversations they were invited into, but they could hear how they were navigating turbulent times, how they've leaned on their faith in times of difficulty, what this pandemic has meant to them and their religious communities. And they could watch that whenever they wanted in the safety of their own home or in a small group or in an RA training or wherever it might be. So I'll pop it in the chat where our resources are, but as much as you could really center it in the voices of your own student population, I think they're our most powerful witnesses.
So we are 3 minutes from time, and I have a few items that I'd like to share with you. And then if you'd like, you can definitely linger around. I can stay in the space, but I'm just like, wow, we definitely need to do this again. I saw that comment come in the box, and Dawn and I were like, okay, we're going to be very specific in our time together, but there's never enough time, and we really need to be in deeper partnership and have some focus opportunities to engage this information. So thank you so much for being with us today. So wow, we should definitely do this again. We hope that you are inspired or at least excited for your own spaces, disciplines, spheres of influence, and are thinking about how to do this on your campus by providing models from different institutions and elevating the importance of and the power in and opportunities that lie in engaging religious diversity and advancing civic pluralism, increasing interfaith literacy, and establishing intentional institutional teams that prioritize and pursue interfaith cooperation in sustainable ways. We hope that you're leaving here with ideas, and I'm sure a ton of questions, because there's so many that we still have to get through in the chat. And I know that I'm thinking about a few too as well. So I just want to say to please reach out. And we'd love to stay in conversation with you. So I hope that you are leaving inspired and replenished and hopeful for your work, although perhaps you might not know where to start or how to pivot or how to contextualize some of the things that you heard today for your specific contest. I just want to let you know that I'm available, Dawn's available, our panelists are available to continue the conversation with you. So later this week, you will receive an email with a recording of today's conversation, a list of the resources that are in the chat or that we mentioned to ensure that you have everything in one place. And if there's something that you'd like to learn more about or process further, please do not hesitate to reach out. I also want to inform you, someone had asked, what's the institute that Kelly was talking about? The Institute at Interfaith Excellence. That's the partnership and the work of IFYC and AAC&U in building these teams and strategically impacting institutional change. And so that application process is now officially open. Please visit the Institute at Interfaith Excellence, as we call IIE, website to learn more about this year's faculty, mentors, our goals, and important deadlines. I'd like to encourage you to look through the materials and consider applying. However, if your institution isn't just ready this year, or there's just vastly different priorities and you need to gather some buy-in or think about who intentionally will be a part of that team, review the application and let it serve as a guide for your 2023 application. It'll be quite informative. I also want to let you know that today's conversation was a glimpse into our work and that there are many other chapters in the publication, including chapters on how to use data to inform interfaith planning and decision-making, using curriculum to prepare all students for the religiously diverse world, how to fund and assess interfaith education, considerations in developing interfaith leadership, creating and sustaining interfaith partnerships, and much, much more. We're also continuing the work and resourcing campuses, developing curriculum to support pre-professional fields, as Francis had mentioned, nursing and faith programs, integrating interfaith cooperation in off-campus communities, and so forth. And none of this would have been possible without the generous funding of the Arthur Vining Davis Foundation and Lilly Endowment. So we thank you. Lastly, if you enjoyed today's conversation, please join IFYC Network and AAC&U Network and stay up to date with the curriculum development, the funding, the webinars, the resources, the seminars, strategic planning initiatives. Stay involved with us. I welcome you also to jump into our work on #interfaith and learn about engaging religious diversity online, or take a look at our Black Interfaith Project. Connected to our Black Interfaith Project, we have a webinar that I want to invite you to on March 14th, which is titled The Spiritual Legacy of Pauli Murray. I want to thank you for your time. Take care and see you soon. I know we're over time, but I will stay. Enjoy your day, and thank you for being in community with us.